Lara's story began as a classic fairy tale, promising a happy ending, but turned into the worst nightmare of her life. She married Tom at the tender age of 19. He was older, more confident, a man on his own 2 feet, and a persuasive man. "Why do you need to study, my dear?" he said, stroking her hand. "Have children, keep the house, and I'll provide for you. You'll have everything you could ever dream of." And Lara believed him. She lost herself in him, in the family, in the children who soon arrived. First came a daughter, then a son a couple of years later. The years flew by unnoticed in this routine, amidst worries, a whirlwind of school assemblies and childhood illnesses. She didn't even notice 13 years had passed. She had no diploma, no work record, no credit card. She had Tom, a house, and children. She thought it was armor impenetrable by any bullet in life. She was wrong. That Tuesday began normally. In the morning, Lara saw her husband off to work, got the children ready for school, cleaned the house, and went shopping. By evening, as rain began to pound outside, she set the table, set the plates, and called everyone to the table. The children were already in their room doing their homework, and Tom was expected back any minute. When the key turned in the lock, Lara wiped her hands on her apron and walked out into the hallway with her usual smile. But Tom didn't smile back. He was pale, composed, somehow alien. Behind him, Lara noticed a woman. She was standing on the landing, straight as a string, wearing an expensive coat, her hair perfectly coiffed, and the look of a conqueror. Tom crossed the threshold. Still wearing his shoes, approached Lara, and said quietly but firmly, "Pack your things. We're breaking up. I'm going to Karina." Lara backed against the wall, confused. She looked at him and saw a stranger. Where had the man she'd given 13 years of her life to, the one to whom she'd painfully given birth to children, the one she'd nursed, the one she'd waited for, disappeared to? Tom silently walked past her into the bedroom, opened the closet, pulled out an old duffel bag, and tossed it at Lara's feet. "Pack the essentials. Quickly." And then all hell broke loose. Lara rushed to the children's room, trying to go to them, to hug them, to explain, to protect them. But Tom grabbed her elbow, yanked her back. "Blocking the way," she screamed. She tried to break free, to hit him, but he held her tight. The woman in the coat, Karina, was still standing on the landing, watching with a smile. Lara was desperate to get to the children, begging for at least a minute to tell them their mother loved them, that she'd be back. Tom was silent. He dragged her back into the hallway and stuffed the first thing he could find into her bag. An old sweater, jeans, sneakers. He pulled her passport out of the nightstand and placed it on top, as if he were handing her a resignation letter. Lara's wallet? She didn't have a wallet. She never had any money of her own. Tom gave her money for groceries and small change. But Lara had no savings of her own. Lara tried to enter the nursery again and grabbed the doorframe. Tom simply pulled her hands away, opened the front door, and pushed her out onto the cold concrete stairwell. She staggered, her shoulder hitting the railing. Her bag flew out after her. And then the door slammed. Lara heard the click of the lock. The rustling of clothes meant Karina had apparently finally gone inside. The barking of the neighbor's dog from upstairs. She stood barefoot. In his haste, Tom hadn't even let her put on her shoes. Her slippers had been left in the hallway. The cold stone of the stairs burned her feet. She was wearing only the light robe she'd worn while preparing dinner. Lara clutched her bag to her chest, stared at the door, and couldn't believe it was real. 13 years of marriage. 2 children. Not a single betrayal on her part, not a single argument that could have foreshadowed it. And here she stood, barefoot, in a robe, holding her passport and an old sweater. While her children were crying in their room because their dad had brought in a strange woman and thrown their mom out. She rang the doorbell. Silence. She rang again, then began banging her fists, shouting, "Tom, open up. Give me the kids." The neighbor's door opened slightly. An elderly woman peered out, gasped in fear, and quickly closed the door. No one wanted to interfere. Tom didn't open the door. About 10 minutes later, Lara heard his voice from just beyond the door, calm and indifferent. "Go away, Lara. I'll call the police and say you're violent and attacking people. You know who will believe them? You have nothing. You're nobody. Go away." She slid down the wall onto the cold floor. She sat there for a while, feeling neither cold, nor pain, nor fear. Only emptiness. Then, mechanically, she put on the clothes from her bag. Old jeans, a sweater, sneakers. She stuffed the robe back. She stood up and went down the stairs, because there was no point in staying there. It was raining outside. Icy, autumnal, biting. She walked out of the building, and the wind hit her face. Her wet hair stuck to her cheeks. She walked wherever her eyes led, because there was nowhere else to go. Her parents lived far away, in another city. Friends. After 13 years of confinement at home, her friends had faded away, leaving only familiar mothers at playgrounds with whom she couldn't have a heart-to-heart talk. Lara wandered through the city at night, her thoughts a jumble. She thought about her daughter, probably crying into her pillow. About her son, who was afraid but didn't show it. About how this strange woman in an expensive coat put them to bed. About how tomorrow morning the children would wake up and their mother would be gone. And no one would explain why. They would be told that their mother was bad, that their mother had left on her own, that she had abandoned them. Lara knew Tom was capable of this. He always had a way of spinning everything in a favorable light. She wandered into a 24-hour store on the outskirts. The saleswoman, an elderly woman with tired eyes, looked at Lara's wet, shivering body and asked simply, "Whose place are you? Are you lost or something?" Lara shook her head and asked for a drink. She had no money. The woman sighed, poured a glass of water from the cooler, and gave it to her free of charge. Lara drank it, warming her cold fingers on the warm plastic. And then something inside her snapped. Not anger, no. Despair suddenly turned into cold determination. She remembered Tom's eyes as he pushed her out the door. There was no hatred in them. There was indifference. And indifference is more terrible than any anger. Indifference means you're already dead to that person. And that means there's nothing left to hope for. She was left alone in a strange city. Without money, without a roof over her head, without a profession, without connections. She didn't even have a phone. It remained on the nightstand in the hallway. But she had two things Tom hadn't considered: her passport, which he'd thrown into her bag out of inertia, and a maternal instinct that turned into a beast mode when it came to children. Lara didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But she knew one thing: she wouldn't die on the streets, she wouldn't disappear, and she would get her children back. Maybe in a year, 2, 10 years. She would wipe away her tears, find a job, get back on her feet, study, sleep at train stations if necessary, but she would come back. And someday, looking into Tom's eyes, she would say what he had said to her today: "You will never see your children again." The night was just beginning, and a long struggle lay ahead. But Lara had already taken the first step. She had survived. She hadn't shattered against that door. She stood up and walked into the darkness, so that one day she would emerge into the light and bring her children with her.